What these animals were doing was not normal. That much was clear to everybody on the excursion. Incidentally, a vet was also among them, and he was the only one who seemed to realize what was really going on. He was terrified, but he knew he needed to get everyone to safety immediately. It was way too dangerous to stay here. He told everybody, "This isn't good, we should run." But nobody seemed to care. He realized that their lives might well be in his hands. "Everybody, do you hear me? I'm serious. We need to get out of here right now." Mark tried again, but nobody moved. A few of the others just looked in his direction for a second, but they immediately turned back to the sheep, amazed by the weird phenomenon that was occurring right in front of them. They weren't listening to him. Mark looked at the sheep again, thinking that maybe he had gotten it wrong, but there was no doubt about it. They were very restless and walking in circles. He'd never seen this kind of behavior before, but he had heard and read about it enough to be able to recognize it. He was 100% sure of what was happening here, and it was bad news. Mark was at his wit's end, thinking of a way to make everyone around him understand that they were truly in danger. He finally just grabbed the guy who happened to be standing next to him by the shoulders and explained what was going to happen if they did not leave right now. "But what about the rest of the trip? We still have to hike up the mountain," the guy replied. Mark groaned, realizing that this was going to be more difficult than he had hoped. "What don't you understand about what I just said? If you stay here, you risk your life. Forget about the hike." This warning finally seemed to work. Some others heard what he had told the man, and he finally had their attention. Mark breathed a sigh of relief as he realized that they were all listening to him now. He jumped up on a big rock and yelled, "Please listen up!" Everyone finally stopped talking and gathered around, waiting for him to continue. "Good, finally. As I've been trying to tell you, this right here," he said, pointing to the sheep walking in a circle, "is a big problem." He repeated his explanation, and the group gasped in shock. Absolute chaos erupted as they all started speaking at once, their panic growing. "Please stay calm. We have to leave now, but panicking will only make things worse. Follow me. I promise I will bring you to safety," Mark urged, eager to get away. He jumped off the rock and started walking back the way they had come, quickening his pace as he noticed the sheep growing more restless. Most followed him, but not everyone was convinced. A few stayed behind, scoffing at the urgency. "Aren't you coming with us?" someone asked, but they shook their heads. "Nah, I'm not buying it. They're just sheep. Besides, I paid for this excursion, and I'm finishing it. I'm hiking up that mountain with or without the rest of you." "Yeah, tell them. The view from the top is amazing. I'm not missing that," another agreed. Mark sighed. "Do what you want. You're free to go. I've told you what I know, but you're risking your life by going up there." "Oh, because of some sheep walking in circles? Sure, you go ahead and run, but I'm not giving up." Mark wished them luck and walked on, no longer concerned with who followed. His only goal now was to get himself to safety. After a few minutes, he noticed that most of the group had still decided to follow him. A woman approached him. "Sir, thank you for helping us. We never would have left if it weren't for you, but what will happen to them?" She pointed toward the mountain, referring to those who stayed behind. "I have no idea, but I wouldn't want to be in their position when it happens. They might never make it home safely. It's a huge risk they're taking." She nodded, and they continued walking in silence. Some whispered among themselves, wondering whether Mark was really telling the truth, anxiously awaiting what would happen next. As they walked, Mark pointed to the sky. "Do you hear that?" The forest was filled with loud calls from animals, their distress evident. "They all feel it coming," Mark explained, confident he had made the right decision. He felt sorry for those who ignored his warnings. Suddenly, he felt something wet on his face. He looked up to see that it had started to rain. "Well, that is just great," he muttered. If they wanted to get out of this forest in time, they had to hurry. Their chances of success were only becoming slimmer now. The rain intensified, dropping from the sky with a fury that seemed almost vengeful. Each droplet reduced visibility and turned the path into a muddy maze. Mark squinted, Trying to discern the path ahead, the rain smeared everything into a blurry landscape, but his experience gave him an edge. The group formed a human chain, not just for physical support, but as a silent assurance. We're in this together. As they moved, Mark recounted past expeditions, offering lessons on navigating the terrain. His steady voice distracted them from the relentless downpour. Just when the weight of the situation seemed unbearable, a slender ray of sunlight broke through the clouds, casting a muted glow. It wasn't much, but it rekindled hope. The path grew more rugged. Clara lost her footing on a slimy stone and let out a sharp cry as pain shot through her ankle. Tara and Leo assessed her injury and fashioned a makeshift splint using a sturdy branch and belts. The group's unity was evident as they worked together to ensure Clara's comfort. Mark knelt beside her, guilt weighing on him. He prided himself on keeping his group safe, but now responsibility felt heavier. Looking into Clara's eyes, he whispered words of comfort, realizing that leadership wasn't just about guiding, it was about being there for those who faltered. Continuing without a proper break was out of the question. The group huddled, weighing their options. Given the weather and Clara's condition, they needed shelter. Mark recalled an old cabin he had once stumbled upon. It wasn't much, but it would provide refuge. With renewed vigor, they pushed forward, optimism lifting their spirits. The sound of raindrops on leaves slowly gave way to the distant echo of a wooden structure. The cabin was near. Pushing open the creaky door, they were greeted by the welcoming embrace of the cabin's interior. The scent of old wood and moss filled the air. Within minutes, a fire crackled in the hearth, its warmth drawing them closer. Wet clothes were hung, their dampness gradually yielding to the heat. Shadows flickered on the walls as relief settled over the group. In one shadowy corner, Mark found an old radio covered in dust. Intrigued, he fiddled with the knobs. A low static buzz filled the room before a voice emerged, broadcasting unsettling news. The transmission mentioned peculiar animal behaviors and urged caution. The group exchanged uneasy glances, realizing their journey might be more perilous than they had believed. As the broadcast continued, it became clear they weren't alone in facing these challenges. The news was alarming, reinforcing their reliance on Mark's instincts. Once skeptical of his precautions, the group now placed their full trust in him. Mark spread out a map on the wooden table, using a lantern for illumination. He outlined potential routes, highlighting areas of concern. As they strategized, Tara raised a crucial point. Shouldn't they warn the people at the mountain base and the nearby town? A heavy silence followed. Their mission was no longer just about survival. It was about protecting others. Mark proposed a daring plan to split into two teams. One would warn those at the mountain base, while the other would alert the town. It was a risk, but with stakes this high, it had to be taken. As dawn approached, the two teams prepared. Emerging from the forest's edge, Mark's team reached the town. The sight of people going about their evening routines, unaware of the approaching peril, deepened their urgency. Families began packing essentials, preparing to leave at a moment's notice, while others secured their homes. Back in the forest, half of Mark's group pushed forward to save those still on the mountain. Time was critical. As they climbed, they found the hikers who had scoffed at Mark's warnings. Now, fear replaced their arrogance. "We should have listened," one muttered. "Can you help us?" another pleaded. Humbled, they followed Mark's group, relying on their knowledge to navigate the treacherous terrain. As dawn broke, a tremor shook the ground, a stark reminder of the looming disaster. Upon reaching town, Mark coordinated with the leaders, his insights and the town's resources combined, strengthening their defenses. The town, once skeptical, now moved with urgency. Families gathered supplies, neighbors helped one another, and the streets buzzed with action. Inside the council room, Mark and local authorities analyzed reports of unusual animal behavior. The signs were undeniable. The crisis was imminent. Efforts were swiftly organized, vehicles loaded, camps established, and volunteers mobilized to rescue those still on the mountain. Anxiety grew as tremors became frequent and intense. The sky filled with flocks of birds, their erratic flight alarming the townspeople. The forest, once alive with nature's symphony, now echoed with distressed animal cries. As night fell, Mark's group ventured into the wilderness with torches, guiding those still stranded. The hikers, who had once dismissed his warnings, now clung to his every word. Fear had stripped away their bravado. Then, a powerful tremor struck, toppling trees and shaking the town's foundations. The earth's wrath was undeniable. The ground roared, twisting the once serene landscape into chaos. Trees bent violently, and the earth shifted like a storm-tossed sea. Despite the panic, Mark's team held firm, pulling one another to safety. Their unity became their strongest defense against nature's fury. Then, silence. The tremors ceased, but devastation surrounded them. Buildings crumbled, roads were blocked, and injuries were assessed. Yet determination overshadowed despair. From the ruins, heroes emerged. Mark's group, fueled by resilience, searched for survivors, shared supplies, and guided the lost. In the distance, the town's faint lights shone, a beacon of hope. As they approached, the sight brought relief. Families reunited, friends embraced, and strangers wept with gratitude. Mark and his team were hailed not just for their guidance, but for their unwavering courage. At sunrise, the town faced its reality. Ruins, but also resilience. People worked side by side, clearing debris, tending to the injured, and rebuilding. The earthquake had tested them, but it had also united them. That night, around a communal fire, survivors shared tales of courage and survival. Their stories, filled with hardship and hope, bonded them even further. Sitting apart, Mark gazed into the flames, replaying the events in his mind. The power of nature was undeniable, but so was the strength of community. Lessons had been learned, the need to respect nature's warnings, and the unbreakable power of unity. As dawn broke, a new day began, and with it, a stronger, more connected town.